Now some motorcycles are born to be commuters, point A to point B and no imagination required. Others on the other hand are designed to be a canvas for your imagination, and no brand in India exemplifies that ethos better than Royal Enfield. And what they've done now is taken that thought process and distilled it into this one brand new motorcycle that they're calling the Scram 411. Now, of course, there are no prizes for guessing that this is an offshoot of the Himalayan brand. I mean, it looks almost identical to it. That said, where the Himalayan is supposed to be purpose-built and focused, the Scram 411 is supposed to be a fun Swiss Army knife designed to be more accessible on the road and carrying forward that Himalayan off-road DNA for the rough stuff. But before we get into how this motorcycle rides both on and off the road, let's take a closer look at the design and what sets this Scram 411 apart from its sibling. This is Auto Today. My name is Dipayan. Let's get to our review. Look at the Scram and you won't be hard pressed to see its lineage from the Himalayan. Instead of a bulky roll cage in the front, the Scram is minimal with a small cowl around the headlamp. The tall visor has been dropped entirely, and most importantly, Royal Enfield have dropped the 21-inch front wheel for a 19-inch wheel instead. There are different seats too. The one on the Scram is a single unit as opposed to the split seats on the Himalayan. It gets a different texture and is lower by around 10 millimeters. Where Royal Enfield have really focused the bulk of their efforts though is on the paint scheme. Bright coloured paint scheme with well laid out motifs bring the Scram 411 to life and really set it apart from its adventure touring sibling. Thumb the starter and you'll be greeted by a familiar exhaust note from the 411cc long stroke that we've seen on the Himalayan. It goes on the Scram as is, which means you get 24.3 bhp at 6500 rpm and 32 Nm of peak torque at 4250 rpm. Like on the Himalayan, you get almost 80% of that torque from as little as 2000 rpm. The generous low-end torque, like on the Himalayan, is a boon off-road. Tricky obstacles only require you to take your fingers off the clutch, throw the bike in first gear and let the bike chug through or over whatever is in your way. It rarely runs out of steam or even requires a nudge to get it over a hill. Out on the road, the slightly more neutral riding position makes for a much more accessible motorcycle. Both the front and rear springs have dropped travel in favor of stiffness, and this means that the Scram feels more stable on flat surfaces but is noticeably more stiff over the rough patches. Highway cruising does bring in some expectable wind blasts, but it's no deal breaker considering that the Scram is best enjoyed between 90 and 110 km per hour. Vibrations aren't as much of an issue, although if you are trying to get a top speed run in, you're going to meet some vibrations as the needle crawls past the 120 kmph mark. Off-road though, even with the lower ground clearance, the Scram can do everything the Himalayan can, and that is saying something. Remember, the only real difference between the siblings are the spring travels and the front wheel, and yet the Scram manages to be the perfect middle ground between an adventure tourer and a daily rider that's great both on road as well as off road. Now we spent the better part of today riding the Royal Enfield Scram 411 on the road, off the road and everything in between. And I have to admit, I'm beginning to catch some feelings. This is turned out to be that motorcycle that perfectly bridges the gap between on-road daily drivers and weekend off-roading. This is that one motorcycle that you can use every day and then take it out and properly hammer some trails on the weekend. Now, prices are out and they should be on your screen right now. But right now we don't know the prices. If Royal Enfield have got the prices right, this stands to be a dominant force in its segment. That's it from us. This is Didi signing off.